Our guest today is Kirk Koennecke, Superintendent of the Indian Hill Exempted Village School District in Ohio, and the 2023 National Superintendent of the Year. Kirk's known for reimagining what learning looks like, pushing innovation, leadership, and community engagement to the center of everything his district does. From project-based learning to developing future-ready leaders, he's helping Indian Hill stay at the front of the national conversation about what's possible in public education. Kirk, welcome to the SSDA Soundwave.
Great, Yuri. Thanks for having me.
Kirk, we're extremely grateful. You traveled from your district in Ohio, right, to visit us in Santa Maria, where you did a fantastic, fabulous presentation for our members in the Santa Maria area. We had, I think, over 60 people on the Zoom, in addition to the folks that we had there in the room. And what an inspiring talk you gave. I want to just first off thank you, give you all my gratitude for traveling to us, visiting with us, and spending the day with us there in Santa Maria.
Well, thank you so much. It was my pleasure, and what an amazing room of talented people that we got to spend time with that morning. I left inspired by them and energized, especially those students that we got to meet that day.
And we're blessed also to have you joining us this year at our annual conference, which is taking place March 7th through 10th in Sacramento. So this coming year in 2026. I think this is going to be great. Have you started working on and thinking about what you're going to be presenting to our members in March?
I've really been thinking a lot about your theme and where you're headed as not only an association, but how you're trying to service your members, Yuri, and this notion, again, of leadership and talent development. How do we help people think through all of that strategically? And I really love these words, assess, aspire, and achieve. And as we're talking about the big thinking that you're asking people to do, I think it's always great for reflective leaders to be empowered with activities and methods that help them do that kind of thinking. So I'm planning for a lot of interactive activity, a lot of reflection, and a lot of input by the audience members. So hopefully we have a lot of fun while we're doing some deep thinking.
I'm looking forward to it, Kirk. And let's talk a little bit about the leadership. It's something that you've are very experienced in, and that's a lot of what you talk about. One of the things that I've noticed as I travel around the state is that many districts lack kind of a clear vision or mission. It's been developed over, maybe 20, 30 years ago or 15 years ago, but it hasn't really been revisited and folks haven't focused on it. Let's talk a little bit about that. What is the importance of that vision, having that vision as kind of your bellwether, right? Your compass.
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, I know you talk about this a lot, and it matters so much. We need to get people to embrace their roles in public education. And it doesn't matter what that role is, but if you are a CEO or superintendent, or you're a director, or you're a principal, you're a board member or trustee, you have to look around at the landscape nationally and recognize that over a third of the public schools in this nation don't actually have an operating vision or mission or strategic plan. That's really striking and scary. And it's also a reason why there are so many alternative choices and forms and competition out there. And this isn't anything new. You know this, Yuri. I mean, you've been watching it happen for decades, and so have I. And so it is crucial for leaders to develop the notion in other leaders that you have to have this dialogue with your community. You have to be able to give people some aspirational direction and some focus and some alignment around shared missions. And when you do that, magic happens for kids. And that's the bottom line, is if you want to have a vision, you're going to help a child. And so I think, so important to consider that in any leadership role that you're in, even if you're a teacher in a classroom, right? Every classroom moves in a direction.
I think that's very sage advice. And in thinking about that, I've seen a new movement here in California. I don't know if you're seeing it in other parts of the country, but um, defining the profile of a graduate, and that could be elementary school, could be middle school, could be high school, but actually defining that ahead of time so that you know where you're going and what you're trying to achieve, and basically getting the sign in of all of the teachers, the community. Have you seen that in other places, and do you find that to be a valuable exercise?
I think to enforce any one particular platform, people use this label a lot of a graduate profile or a future graduate, but I think the activity that you're talking about is really important, especially if you don't even have a teaching and learning plan in your district. Starting by listening to your own staff members and your students about what does good teaching and learning look like can lead to the development of these attributes or outcomes we want for learners, which create this kind of profile, right? And when you have that language, that can be so powerful to dialogue with your community. And when your community can give input into what they want to see from future graduates, then you can start to align all of your K through 12 practices around these aspirations. And so I think it's such a valuable dialogue for people to go. And when people say, I don't know how to get started on a strategic plan, that is one way to get started. And for people who already have a
Recognize it.
strategic, yeah, for
Just
people who
recognize.
already have a mission statement or a vision statement, it can also be a good activity to do afterwards, right? Because it can help you reflect and assess and evaluate if you think you're heading in the right direction. And so I think the bottom line is great activity for people.
Yeah. So our vision for this year has been to talk about the ethic of excellence, right? And we had a conversation with Ron Berger. He did a webinar for us, who wrote the book, The Ethic of Excellence. And I started off this year with that because it was important to me to see that we embrace that excellence as a standard, right? I do it here in the organization as SSDA, is like, I don't want to put anything out that's not A plus, right? My standard is super high. I believe that if we hold ourselves to a higher standard, we produce better work. How does that resonate with what you do and your leadership training and the way you carry your school, right, or lead your school?
Great question. First and foremost, and I joke about this, but it's true. I don't make any strategic decisions here on my own. And so that's important to say because it goes back to this idea of a work ethic and a standard of excellence. I think in leadership, modeling the way is so important. And so it would be very easy for me to walk around every day and make decisions, but probably half of them would be the wrong decisions. When you open up your ears and you listen to other people and you take input and you take feedback and you work collaboratively with teams, then the best decisions come to light. They reveal themselves, right? The room is always the smartest person in the room, not
Yeah, I like that.
Yuri, not Kirk, right? And so I think that's what that author is talking about a little bit. And when you talk about a standard of excellence, I think it's very important that we do things, and I say this all the time, intentional, routine, consistent, and that we're modeling those types of behaviors. And when we do that, we get where we need to go. And so I love this idea of what is the standard. You don't define the standard. Your Kirk doesn't make up the standard. The
Right.
standard is here. Can Kirk meet it? Can Yuri meet it? Can everybody else meet the standard? And then it's not just about me and you, it's about the standard.
Yep. And modeling it, right? So modeling it for others so that they understand where they're going and how to get there, right?
That's right. And it's so important for people to have the compass and have some tools. And, our job, my job as a leader at Indian Hill, any other superintendent with an organization, any head principal in a building, is to provide those resources and that support so that people feel seen and heard and that they are given time to talk about their wants and needs, and then we figure out priorities.
Right, right. Let's talk a little bit about school culture. Tell me about the culture at your school at Indian Hills, and maybe where it started before you got there, and what you've done to nourish it and to make it flourish.
Well, first, I'm grateful and blessed to work at Indian Hill. We call it the Hill, right? And we in Cincinnati, there are so many amazing public and private school choices. And so, in this thriving community, I think I'm always trying to stay grounded, knowing that people have choice. And as a public school, we want to make sure that we are the destination, location, and choice. And when I got this job, I knew that it was a destination location at the time, and I was blessed to get the opportunity. And then I learned a little bit more about this culture, right? And a culture like Indian Hill is rich in tradition and ceremony and celebration and alumni. And
Mm,
then there are the things you do programmatically to try to maintain or sustain that. And what we had to do here was we had to talk about who are we comping ourselves against, and what models are out there, and do they make sense for Indian Hill? And that's what led to this idea of culture and talking about vision and mission. Indian Hill actually had never had a strategic plan that was actionable at the classroom level.
wow.
And so the IH Promise plan was an organic plan where we took thousands of pieces of input and data from students, staff, parents, community partners, and we created this initiative, right, that we call the IH Promise. And not only was the process inspirational and engaging, it was revealing to all of us that in order to go where we wanted to go, we had to really start comping ourselves against the top public schools in the nation and the other competing models to make sure we maintained a high standard of excellence. People always had the expectations around here, but maybe we didn't always have the structures in place to support those expectations. And I think we've aligned those things through our vision and mission process.
And Kirk, so for those folks out there that want maybe to replicate something like this, and I say replicate, every district does it differently. And I heard in your talk you talked about that. It looks different everywhere. But what pieces of advice could you give to folks that want to start a process to define that and to start to build those structures in place so that they know where they're going, right?
I first and foremost think that there has to be some engagement with the community, Yuri, where you talk about culture, and it's as simple as inviting people in with an all call, right? And then saying, if you'd like to participate with us, please tell us at what level that you're willing to engage, and then we'll be responsive and allow you to engage at that in that way. Some districts don't like to do it that way, right? Some districts might want to send out a survey and see whether there's excitement for an idea. But I think if you truly want to build culture that is long term, you have to go through a process of continual community engagement activity and cycles of input, because that's what keeps people interested and involved, and it allows you to know as a school leader what they're thinking and what's going on. And that includes students. So if I was going to say specifically where would I start, I would start focus groups with my students and asking them about their school experience. And then I would move to their teachers and then their parents and then community partners. And I would scaffold it that way so that everybody knew all those voices matter.
I love that. I love starting with the students, right? Everything we do should be centered around the students, and there should be no other competing interests with what we're trying to do for our students. Um, I like that you said continually, right? I think it's important for folks to understand that this is a never-ending process. Once you start it, it's an ongoing, continuous renewal, refresh, like you said, assess, right? Aspire. I mean, you have to continuously, and I even look at what we did for a strategic plan last year. The first thing we did this year was sit down with it and say, does it still meet our expectations, our goals? Do we need to amend it? Do we need to change it? Who do we need to talk to? Does it resonate with our members? Those are the kinds of questions that we are asking ourselves right now.
Great questions for reflection all the time, right? And then, as a team, doing that in intervals has to be intentional and routine. I tell people who are principals and aspiring superintendents all the time, if you're looking for the authority in the decision making and the title, right, that's all well and good. But what you need to really be thinking about is, are you a really active listener, and are you willing to take all the input and feedback? Because that's what the role is really all about. And then how do you help other people disseminate all that input and feedback? That's what you do to be influential and impactful in your role if
Yep.
you're going to embrace your role. And then how do you help other people to embrace their roles? That's what's going to help move people forward and help develop other people. And at the end of the day, that's my job, is to develop other leaders and other people so they can be successful. You cannot do that in public schools without this ongoing engagement effort, and you have to enjoy it.
Yes, you do have to enjoy it. But most of us do, right? We're passionate about what we're doing, and somebody was, I was talking to a superintendent yesterday at NREA. We were at the National Forum for Advancement of Rural Education. And the superintendent said, I've been doing this for 30 something years. And every time I have a moment of reflection to say, it's time for me to retire, and I have that kid run up to me, and hug me. And it's just like, this is why I'm doing this, right? This is why I keep doing this, even though I could retire, right?
And you're smiling while you're saying it, right? That's the key. And we all work in a people organization, but we all love children and want them to be successful. If that doesn't get you excited every day to do your work, right, then you should look for other work.
Then you're in the wrong business, right?
Right.
Kirk, let's talk a little bit about you. You do some coaching, leadership coaching for folks. How did you get into this business? I mean, what motivated you to make that turn and say, I'm doing great work here as superintendent, but I want to coach folks, right?
I think just growing up, always being involved in activities where I was around athletic coaches or mentors or people who I saw giving service to the community, I was learning about mentoring, right? And I was learning some things about good coaching advice. And then when I became a professional educator, I really started to think about, if I'm going to critique and evaluate how other people act and behave, I should really know what I'm talking about. And of course, I've always wanted to help people. And I've really, as I became a parent, right, and as I was a coach, I wanted to make sure I was never not helping someone else develop their goals. And there's a kind of a switch that flips when you become a certain age or have a certain level of experience. I don't know how old I was. I was probably too old already. But the idea became, it's not about me, right? It's about others.
Yeah.
And then I felt like, okay, then I need to be able to do this the right way. And so that led me to some learning. And over time, I've just continued to try to learn. And there's a big difference between, performance coaching and mentoring others. And there's also a big difference in terms of professional training that goes on across industries. And the best practices of some of the best companies, the military, nonprofits in our country, are very applicable also in our profession. And so I've tried to learn some of those tools with the intent of passing them along. And what I find, Yuri, as you already know, because you do this every day, that's the payoff.
It
When
is.
someone else takes the tool and runs with it for themselves, there's a payoff there.
Yeah.
And that's what I've always loved about education, is helping others to help themselves. And so in my way, that's one of the ways that I try to do it.
Our motto is empowering educational leaders for the success of every student. I mean, that's what SSDA stands for. And so that totally resonates with me. That's how I feel every day, that what my mission and vision is, right? To really go out there and give folks the tools that we can give them, whether it's from me or others like you, or connecting folks with others that can support and provide them those tools. So
I
All that
love this.
resonates with me.
I love this notion of big thinking, right? And this idea when people hear that phrase, what comes into their mind, and it's this aspirational attitude that you have, and this approach that, right, we can do big thinking and make things happen no matter where we are. That is what I'm here for all day long, right? Like if you aren't aspirational and you don't aren't future focused for kids, then again, there must be something else more important going on. But
Yep.
I connect with that theme, and I think you all are promoting that theme for leaders, and that's wonderful.
Kirk, we are using Franklin Covey, the model of the four essential roles of leadership, for our Elevate Ed new superintendents and aspiring superintendents program, which are folks that are in their first 3 years of being a superintendent or are aspiring to be a superintendent. There are a lot of models out there for leadership. We picked this one. We have a relationship with Franklin Covey. I noticed in some of the material that you put out there, that you also, a lot of your coaching is founded on the same model, the Franklin Covey model. Talk to me a little bit about that, and I'll just say, from my perspective, I think it really doesn't matter which model you adopt. It really is important to have to be consistent, right? To be focused, and to have some fidelity to the program in order for it to be effective. But it seems like we both have some of the same ideas about how effective Franklin Covey can be. Talk to me a little bit about that and how you use that model.
Yeah, I think for people that are not aware, I think you know this, Yuri. Leadership research itself goes back 70, 80 years, really coming out of the World War II era. Companies were trying to figure out how to help managers become leaders. And so there was this whole generation of people who spent a lot of time researching behavior. And so Blanchard, Maxwell, Covey, all these names that we know, the people that have written books that we've all grown up reading to try to understand leadership. And what comes from all of it is this base language, this kind of coded language to understand how to navigate relationships with other people effectively. And what I like about the four essential roles of leaders as one tool, which I've had some experience with training others, is it comes down to this idea you mentioned at the beginning, of a standard. And how do you meet a standard consistently? How do you act intentionally to show people that you want to build trust with them and have influence? And one of the things they say that resonates with me all the time, and I tell my team this, I'll tell them this again this afternoon when we meet: leadership is a choice. There are people who choose to be leaders. And once you choose to be a leader, your job then becomes to help develop leadership skills in others. That is a priority. If you don't choose to lead, or you don't even choose to follow, your priorities are different. But I love that this comes out of this idea of what are these roles, that leadership is a choice. And then once you make that choice, what level or degree of influence will you have? Very seminal to all the Covey stuff, but to all leadership research. And I think at the end of the day, we do what we were talking about before. You got to encourage the heart and model the way, and think about how to inspire people to a shared vision or mission to get things done.
I love that, Kirk. Those are very sage words, and the model we live by, right? The model I live by here at the organization.
Someone taught me that, right? They're not my words.
Yeah, no, they're great. And you're right. They're based on many years of research on how things work. So on that, Kirk, give me one book if you could recommend people to read something, right? That would help them in their role as a superintendent. What book would you recommend?
All right. Well, real quick, I love Kouzes and Posner's book, Leadership Impact, The Leadership Challenge. It's in its 8th edition now, and it's been around for forever, and it's got that foundational language. But the second one I kind of cheated and told you about before, Yuri, is I love the stuff that Harry Kramer writes, and he's out of the Northwestern Kellogg School of Management. This book, Year 168, is just a fabulous book, easy read, and it's about values and decision making. Those are two books that I just think should be on everybody's shelf that wants to lead.
That's great. That's great. Well, Kirk, I have just published our book, which is called Leading Smalls, Thinking Big. We released it at the the National
I
Forum.
heard.
Yeah. Well, I'm very excited about it. I'm going to have Lisa, my executive assistant, send you a copy. It's a great little read for. I think it's a feel good about what you're doing in a rural setting. Because there's these superintendents, we had 100 superintendents sharing stories and trying to pull nuggets of wisdom out of those stories, right? And we compiled that into this book, and I'm excited about it so far. The folks that have read it, you can read it in an afternoon. Have given me really positive and wonderful feedback. So I'm going to send you a copy of the book.
I look forward to it.
Wonderful. Well, Kirk, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing these very sage words of wisdom. And I'm very much looking forward to having you and seeing you in Sacramento in March.